Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the best podcast in the world. The podcast everybody is waiting for. The podcast for which our ancestors died for. The most useful podcast in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Fading Geek, aka Akash. Now, some of you guys have started calling me the fucking geek. I don't know how accurate that is, nor do I know if the YouTube algorithm is going to be happy. So, I appreciate if you just stop doing that. Yeah. In the very first episode of Fading Geek Originals, we shall talk about what do Linux change. Yeah, we'll mainly be talking about the mindset of the Linux community and also the mindset of the decision makers in Linux realm itself, like the Linux distribution maker, the actual people who add the features for Linux and the Linux kernel itself. Let's dive right into this. I'm not gonna waste a lot of time. So yeah, move on. Let's dive into the first point, the ecosystem in Linux. The ecosystem in Linux is like nature. Yeah, it has everything you want. It has all the variety of stuff you want in the ecosystem. But just like nature, it's just scattered all over the place. I mean, yes, it does have some connectivity, but no, it does also have a lot of stains, and the connectivity is vague and not as good as the Windows or other ecosystem where normal people live. It's also a bit overwhelming for newcomers from Windows. Those poor people have probably just seen the taskbar move up and down, and now they can't even do that. And now they've jumped to this place where you could do literally anything you want. And of course, there's no surprise they would probably face about 3 to 4 cardiac arrest or something like that. We need to simplify things. The Linux ecosystem should have some kind of Linux starter pack. You know what I mean? As in, I don't want it to be named like that, but I think it should have an obvious answer for all the Linux beginners. Because if you go into watching YouTube videos, you will see some newcomers who could be overwhelmed when they see YouTubers saying they need to jump into Ubuntu, and the next minute someone starts ranting about snaps, and then you probably will have to move on to Linux Mint or something like that. You get my point. It's very confusing for these poor people who just jumped from Windows to Linux, which is why I would say the Linux starter pack should include a penguin shaped stress ball, a cheat sheet on a command line shortcuts, and a certificate for surviving your very first kernel update. And I'm definitely not sarcastic in this last few sentences. Moving on, we have the second point, connectivity and integration. And of course, Linux needs to work better with the other apps to make it more connecting and seamless when it comes to the integration of the application with their life. Because let's face it, if you are using Windows, you at least have Samsung, which integrates well with Windows laptop and operating system. If you are using Linux, the maker of the Linux distribution neither knows the mobile you are using, nor do they know the hardware you are using to run Linux, nor do they even know if you are using a laptop or desktop at all. Who knows, you might be like a NASA guy using some Linux distros to like stuff it into some satellite or some shit like that. Who knows? I mean, Linux is a vast thing to be used. You could use Linux for anything, you know, fucking smart toilets and shit like that. So at the end of the day, we need to make the softwares in Linux more obvious. We need to make sure that certain programs are used in desktop and in desktops only, so that we could focus only on desktop and then make that particular program more seamless for desktop itself. One example I could give which Windows has done is integrate ChatGPT into itself in a very seamless manner. And you guys know that ChatGPT has become like this revolutionary non-living thing which is slowly taking over the control of copywriting and many other markets. And let's be honest, it's something which we are gonna probably use for a lot of stuff. I'm talking about ChatGPT. And for that, at least to make it seamless, Windows has done this weird way of forking ChatGPT into itself, into Bing, and then it's probably also gonna add that the taskbar. I think it has already done that, but yeah, if it has not done that, it's probably gonna do that soon. And it's not just ChatGPT; it's just an example which I gave. Although there are a lot of features in Windows which we are not even trying to add into Linux distributions, like the live transcriptions which Windows could do, like the personal assistant which Windows has. I think it's called Cortana or some shit. Like the connections which Windows has managed to build with other brands like Samsung, Amazon, etc. for integrating their applications and programs into Windows to make it better. And you guys know that we are not even trying to do stuff like this in the Linux realm. And in order to bring people from Windows to Linux, this is probably gonna be a very, very huge deal for them. They don't care about whether or not Visual Studio is going to be available in Linux, even though it's not. They're not going to care about Adobe and stuff like that in Linux. They're just going to care about these normal day-to-day stuff, which is not available in Linux. And that could be a major selling point if we do so. It could like attract some people at well, let's just get started with gobbling on the third point, the lack of variety of apps we have. And this is something which I really need to rant about. As you guys probably know, I do have a video editing business. To have a couple of more business which I'm probably gonna say in the future, not now. But let's just talk about the video editing aspect in Linux. Linux has probably the impossible ecosystem for video editing, and the reason why I'm telling this is because there is no exact video editor in Linux which is professional and standard enough in the video editing and VFX market which could be acceptable by other normal users. I mean, sure, we do have Kden Live, we have Shortcut and stuff like that, but it's not even close to what Premiere Pro could do or Final Cut Pro could do. And I'm almost certain that we probably won't be getting Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro in Linux. I mean, come on, they've got their own stuff to deal with. They're handling depression as of now. You think they'll come into Linux? No. What we could actually do is have our own advanced standard premium quality video editor. And as much as you want to argue with me about the video editors we already have, they are not like premium quality. Let's have a look at Blender, for example. That is a premium quality open source free software which all sorts of graphic designing or animation specialists could use. Blender is probably the best throughout, not just in Linux. And we need apps like that. We need softwares like that in the video editing market in Linux as well. Anyways, this is not just about video editing, it's all about the other aspects as well. I'm just ranting about video editing because I do that a lot. We can't consider DaVinci Resolve into this equation because although it's available in Linux, it's not available in all sorts of Linux distributions. Like the other day I tried it in my other laptop with AMD graphics card, and DaVinci Resolve just started shitting hard in there. So yeah, DaVinci Resolve is not the best when it comes to the availability in the Linux. And it's not just the video editing market. Again, I'm talking about the integrated development environments we have in Linux distributions. I'm talking about games, something which everybody rants about that is bad in Linux as of now, and so on. Basically, not to mention, there are a lot of applications in Windows, Linux, and Mac OS which is available everywhere, but it works the best in Windows and Mac OS. Example, WhatsApp. Believe it or not, Windows has a completely different WhatsApp UI, whereas if you install WhatsApp in Linux, it's basically like using WhatsApp web. That's because it's not available completely officially in Linux. And the examples keep getting bigger and bigger, from Unreal Engine to Unity to Godot. When it comes to the game engine market, all three of them, they work the best in Windows. Even though Godot is free and open source, it still has a better integration in Windows. And my point here is that we need to have some kind of application which works the best only in Linux distributions, which is available in Windows, but it does not work as good as it does in Linux. This attracts a lot of users from Windows to Linux, and trust me, I know that. It's like giving idli to a child and then telling them that he would get a bigger chocolate if he got 100 out of 100 in some test. You get my point. In a very similar way, you just tell them, you just give the Windows users an application and tell them that you would be getting a way more premium experience if you switch to Linux. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Moving on to the next point, we need a wider range of devices available for Linux. And I know that a lot of printers, and in fact most printers in the world, is mostly compatible with Linux and has a more seamless experience when compared to Windows in Linux itself. But what Windows has is a wider range of devices which is available for just Windows. Like there are thousands of headphones, thousands of speakers, tablets, RGB headlights, RGB stuff in general, sound boxes, and so on, which are available for Windows, and they have their own softwares and drivers for Windows itself. And this is of course being done because Windows is the most used operating system, and it is ideal for the manufacturers to make the drivers and softwares just for Windows. But I would argue that it would be better, and if not the best, if the Linux community teams up into one, create our own headphones and stuff like that, create a software, an open source software which works the best in Linux, and finally make it seamless for the Linux user, like having headphone application, giving the Linux made open source headphones some options to like add noise cancellation and stuff like that. You know what I'm trying to say? There are a lot of applications for that in Android, and I'm sure there are applications for that Windows as well. Why not just add that into Linux? Why not us make a completely different ecosystem of Linux device which work completely the best just inside the Linux realm? Yeah. Next up, we need more premium suites of softwares available on Linux, and I'm not talking about Libra suite or all sorts of office applications which we already have. I'm talking about premium software suites which is mostly used by developers, VFX designers, all sorts of people like that. I'm talking about suites like Adobe but inside Linux. And of course, I'm 100% sure we're not going to have Adobe in Linux, but what I'm trying to say is that we need to have more suites developed in Linux which is premium enough, which has the qualities and is feature rich enough as a software to be considered as an industry standard, so that the popularity of those software increase, and we need to make that kind of software available for all sorts of operating systems but working the best in Linux itself. So at that point, we have a feature rich suite like Adobe which would attract a lot of people, and now they would switch from Adobe to this suite in Windows itself, but then they would realize it would be the best if they switch to Linux, and that's how you just hook them up and then turn them into using Linux, and that's how evil you just have to be in order to be the best. Alright folks, moving on to the next point, we have the Linux interface itself. Now you guys probably know that almost all sorts of Linux distributions could be customized to make it look and feel and change the workflow to as similar to Windows as possible, and this is one of the Linux specialities. But at the same time, I think that in order to get more audience, we have to market it as a more unique operating system. You have to market it in such a way that Windows users easily able to get around and find it easy to just use Linux, but at the same time should also market it in a way that it is very unique from Windows, that Windows would not be able to do stuff which Linux could do. Now this is a very deep conversation and a different podcast completely, which we could probably do in the future, but we'll have to just skip all that part and just keep it simple as of now. I'm probably gonna elongate it in my future podcast, but as of now, we probably need to market Linux as this operating system which is very easy for Windows users, but at the same time unique enough that Windows is as useless as it seems. And I'm saying this to us in the sense that we need to market it, and of course that's because Linux is in general a community, right? We have to, at the end of the day, market Linux. And if we don't market it, nobody else would. There's no Linux advertisement you would find on YouTube. There's no Linux podcast you would find made by the Linux company, if there is any company at all. You get my point, right? There's no company backing us. It's all the community. And of course, the next point is that we need to keep up with the trend of what we are facing. Like as of now, we just have desktop Linux distribution. We have mobile phones coming in with Linux installed. We have tablets and stuff. I mean, I understand we have all sorts of devices, but we are also not keeping up with the trend. There is no way there's a Linux company, like a Linux based company like System 76 or something like that, who would start, I don't know, VR headsets like what Apple is doing, keep up with the trend. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that we are existing in 2023, where your watch is connected to your laptop, connected to your phone, and everything you do in one place reflects from another place, and every company is trying their best to make everything as seamless as possible. And in all of these, here we are as a community making our Linux distributions as customizable as possible. And I understand customization is the key in Linux, but at the same time, in order to attract people from other places, we need to make it seamless. We need to keep up with the trend when it comes to the seamless experiences they are facing in other operating systems like Windows or Mac OS. And here's where everything again comes in, like Cortana, like the assistants they have, like ChatGPT integration, like the Office integration they have with the operating system, all sorts of stuff like that. This is not possible in Linux as of now, and it's probably a major reason why a lot of people are not turning towards Linux. The seamlessness and also keeping up with the trend. And of course, I'm not meaning that we also should start creating VR headset. That's a shitty move by Apple anyways. I'm probably gonna make another episode on that. But talking about just the technology in general, we need to keep up with the trend, as in not just the devices but also the software features and aspects in general. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen, somewhat unconventional ideas for Linux distributions to attract more Windows use. Remember, this is all in good theories and ideas which I have, but hey, you never know. At the end of the day, Linux might bitch slap Windows and then replace itself with the most used operating system in the world, and maybe some of these ideas might actually make their way into Linux world soon. Thank you for tuning into this podcast in this episode. I'm your host Akash, aka Fading Geek, and until next time, keep yourselves using Linux, keep using some open source applications, please be alive, be healthy, and until next time, goodbye.